Friends, we are getting so close to Easter. I just counted the stories so that we can get to Holy Week by Holy Week. So I am actually going to read 3 little stories. One of them is very short today for us to be able to make sure we can stay with what's happening. We want to celebrate Holy Week during Holy Week. So today, the first story is the lost sheep. So it is from Luke chapter 15, verse 1 through 7 and 11 through 32. Then also Matthew 18, 10 through 11. All kinds of people came to listen to Jesus. He welcomed everybody, even the sinners who did not obey the laws of God. Some temple leaders did not think it was right for Jesus to be friendly with such people. They were bad and should be turned away. So Jesus was nice to everybody. Even if they made sad choices, he still welcomed them and was kind to them. So Jesus told them these stories. If you have 100 sheep and one of them gets lost, what will you do? Won't you leave the 99 in the field and go look for the lost sheep? And when you find it, you will be so happy. You will carry it home right away. You will call your friends and say, "Let's celebrate! I've found my lost sheep." So sheep in this story, during that time, Jesus grazed freely around watering places. At night, the flock was gathered into a field surrounded with a stone wall. So sheep back then were something that people really cared about and took care of. That was a job that a lot of people had. But in this story, he's talking about how a shepherd who takes care of sheep, if he loses just one sheep, he does everything he can to find that sheep. He doesn't just say, "Oh, naughty sheep, he ran away, forget him." No, he goes and finds him. And when he does, he's so excited because he found him. Jesus said, in the same way, there is more happiness in heaven because of one sinner who turns to God than over 99 good people who don't need to. So he's saying that he's kind and welcoming to the sinners because they're kind of like that one sheep that ran away. When we make sad choices or people who are maybe bad that we may think, "Oh no, that's a bad person," Jesus is calling them too. He wants those people who are making sad choices to come, I had a hiccup, back to believing in him and following him. So when those sinners come to Jesus and decide, you know what, I'm not going to sin anymore, I want to be a good person, Jesus and heaven celebrates because they're so happy that that's one less sinner. That's another believer. So Jesus is saying, heaven and I are more excited when a sinner becomes a believer than when 99 people listen and follow. Because it's so amazing when someone who was lost chooses to find Jesus and keep them in their hearts. That is that story. Here's him telling them the rest of that story. The next is 2 sons. It is from Luke chapter 15, verse 11 through 32. Jesus also told them another story. There was once a man who had 2 sons. The older son stayed at home. He worked hard in the fields. The younger son wasn't happy at home. He didn't want to be there. When he was old enough, he took his share of the family's money and left home. So back then, family money, so when their dad would die, when he got old and went to heaven, the younger son would have received 1/3 of his father's wealth, while the elder son would have received 2/3. So his dad hadn't died, but he took that money with him. He decided, I'm not staying here. I don't want to be here. I don't want to work hard. I'm going to leave. So he took his money and he left. Now, the older son stayed and worked and stayed with the father, so he didn't leave. The young man went to another country and lived a wild life. So a life maybe not making good choices, not really working hard to do anything. He didn't care how much money he spent as long as he was having fun. In a few years, the money ran out. So that money that he had, he spent it all. And it was gone. And is he working to earn more money? So what's he going to do? The fun stopped. Soon he had nothing to eat. So he didn't think about how the money had to last him his whole life if he wasn't going to work. So he had done all those fun things and spent all of his money, and then he had nothing. So he started to not be able to eat because he didn't have money. He went to work for a man. The man sent him out to take care of his pigs. The young man would have been glad to eat what the pigs were eating, but no one gave him a thing. Finally, there was only one thing he could do. He went back home. So here he is having all the kinds of fun, spending all his money, but not thinking about the future. Then here he is, he was working with the pigs and thinking, these pigs have food to eat, but I don't. So he decided, I'm going to go back home. His father was working out in the fields. He looked up and saw his son all ragged and dirty. Ragged means maybe his clothes weren't very nice. He didn't have a lot. He was dirty because he didn't have any money. He ran to him and hugged and kissed him. The son told his father he had lived a bad life and was sorry. I am no longer good enough to be called your son, he said. But his father was happy to have him back after so many years. He gave him sandals, new clothes, and even a ring for his finger. He got everything ready for a big party to celebrate his return. So the dad was happy that his son came back after all those years. But the son was thinking, I don't deserve to be your son. I did bad things. I didn't really make good choices. This made the older son, the big brother, angry. He had worked hard for his father all the years his brother had gone and done bad things. But his father had never done anything special for him. So, let's explain this in a way you can understand it. So, the brothers, one stayed and one left, right? The one who stayed worked hard, was very kind, did a lot for his dad. But he just lived a normal life. His dad didn't throw parties for him or give him rings. They just lived their life and worked hard. Now this brother was off doing bad things, but then he didn't have anything. So he came home, and the father was so excited that he came home that he threw a party for him, even though he did bad things. So the older brother is like, what? Why don't I get a party and a ring? I stayed. I did good things. I was a good person. I was a first-time listener. My brother did bad things. Why does he deserve a party? That's not fair. The father told him, my son, everything I have is yours. But we should be glad and celebrate. Your brother was dead, but now he is alive. He was lost, but has now been found. So the dad said, you don't have a party because everything I have is yours. Because you stayed, because you've worked hard, it's all yours. But your brother, he wasn't really dead, but he was lost. Kind of like that sheep, he was lost. He was a sinner, like those people that Jesus welcomed, but he came back. He chose to come back and be with his family and do the right thing. Just like Jesus, when he was talking about how the sinners come and choose to have Jesus in their heart, he celebrates. So the father celebrated that the son decided to leave those bad choices, realize I'm sorry for what I did, and then do right. So it's the same as the lost sheep. So if you're lost and you make bad choices and you come back to Jesus, He is so excited. Mrs. Blair would throw a party too if someone who had made sad choices decided, you know what? Now I'm going to be good. Now I'm going to have Jesus in my heart. All right, one more story. Stay with me, friends. I know that we usually love these stories, and I am loving sharing them with you. So this story is called 10 Men Are Healed. So maybe another miracle? It is from Luke chapter 17, verse 11 through 19. Jesus, Master, have pity on us. Jesus looked up. He was going into a village when he heard the cry for help. He saw 10 men standing a little way off. They all had terrible skin disease called leprosy. So leprosy was the word used for several different kinds of diseases that affected the skin. Leprosy was serious at this time and it had no cure. So leprosy was something that they were sick. It's kind of like a rash. It showed up on their skin. And so people could see that they were sick and they kind of thought of them as, disgusting. Like, those people are sick. Keep them away. We don't like them. We don't want them around me. So people that were sick with leprosy back then kind of were sad. They were lost because people pushed them away. But they were sick. So let's see what Jesus is going to do. Here's a picture of these sick men who are crying for help from Jesus. People who had this disease had a very hard life. They were not allowed to be with their families or any other people. So they didn't choose to be sick. They didn't choose to have leprosy. But because they had it, they weren't allowed to live with their families anymore. They weren't allowed to be around people. No one would touch them because they were afraid of getting the disease. So oftentimes these people became homeless, which means they lived outside. They didn't have a lot of things because they were sick, and people chose to kind of treat them badly and to not allow them to have things even though they were sick. If by any chance the sick people got better, they had to go to a temple and show their priests they were well. If the priests said they were cured, they could go back with their families. When Jesus saw the 10 men, he said to them, "Go show yourselves to the priests." Maybe a miracle? So Jesus is saying, go to church, go to the temple, and show your priests. It makes me so sad that someone who is sick wouldn't be allowed to be with their family. As they were on the way to the priest, the men saw that the sores on their skin were gone. One of the men turned around and ran back to Jesus. He was shouting praises to God. He bowed down at the feet of Jesus and thanked him. The man was from the country of Samaria. Jesus said, 10 men were healed. Where are the other 9? This man from another country came back to thank God. Why was he the only one? So Jesus is wondering, why did only one of them come back and thank me? What about the other 9 men? Then Jesus told the man to stand up. You may go, he said. Your faith has made you well. So Jesus appreciated that this man came back and thanked him for healing him. And he said, go on. And because you were faithful, because you believed, because you asked me for help and you thanked me, you are healed. So that means when God sends you something, when you ask him, can you please help me do this? And he does, you have to make sure that you spend time with him and thank him. When I pray, I always try and remember to first thank him before I ask something. So if I'm asking God to please allow us to go back to school, I have to first thank him for my health and for the health of my students and anything else I may be thankful for before I ask for something. Because just like the story Dr. Croy read us about the Berenstein Bears and the Give Me's, you don't want to just keep asking and not thanking, right? So make sure that you are thanking God for all that he is giving you, even when it's hard to look at things that you have, right? So I hope you enjoyed our stories. I miss you all so much, and I will see you soon.